This is a Glitterball podcast. Before we get into today's episode, please remember I'm judging these housemates based solely off of an edit and not as total people. Please don't send them any hate, it's just a game show. The aftershocks still rumble from our returning housemates, the house nominates, and we've a rule break. From Glitterball, this is He's Always Watching, a Big Brother podcast. Hello fishbowl friends and welcome to another episode of He's Always Watching. Oh, we have so much to get into today, but first, do you like my homage to Pete Burns' infamous coat? Don't worry though, this one is fake, and I do not have to hand it over to anybody. But let's get into today's episode, because we have a whole bunch to talk about, from the aftershocks still rumbling from all of our returning housemates. The housemates nominate once again, and we have a rule break. Uh-oh. Didn't take them long, did it? Ay, caramba. Can they just stick to the rules for once? But no, they cannot, dear friends. Because rules are too difficult to follow, it would seem. But let's get into it. So, where I left you, Marcus had just had an almighty meltdown because he felt like he wasn't being seen on the outside. Well, Marcus, I'm sorry to tell you, I was quite harsh on you first of all. And for that, I kind of apologise because I do get it. But you're not being seen on the outside really, aside from this wishy-washy, will he, won't he, will they, won't he nonsense. I mean, we got to see you holding fingers with Tate today. Like, don't get me wrong, I think he's a nice guy, but there's still nothing really there that we're seeing. So, if you're not making that 45-minute cut, then it really cannot be that interesting. Because the producers are going to follow the interesting threads. It's just a fact. So, I think it is fair to say that Farida has really rocketed up this house. I asked you over on Twitter, and as it currently stands, there is like 58% of you saying no, you're not enjoying how Farida is mixing up the house, so I might be in the minority in what I'm about to say. I think it's good television, and I feel like the thing is, she means well. That's the thing that makes me laugh about all of this. I don't think it's coming from a place of malice. I think she just wants them to come across as interesting to the public. I am glad, however, the house meeting happened and there was kind of a line drawn in the sand of no more talk of the outside world, because I feel like if that just continues to fester and spin, it's going to take them all out of the experience and it's going to make the show worse for us. So I'm glad that there has been a line kind of drawn under the sand with that one, because I think it needed to happen. You know, the other thing I wanted to touch on in this segment before we head to our ad break is something I was actually going to keep for He's Always Watching in the details this week, but I feel like we're going to have something else to touch on. I need to talk about how my opinion on Tate has changed. I was very critical on Tate in the first few weeks, but I feel like as the house has kind of reshuffled and things have changed, we are seeing quite the different side of Tate. And as I said before, if you're not doing interesting things, it's not necessarily going to be shown on the show. And I feel like we've been getting glimpses of Tate over the last sort of few weeks. It's all kind of been ramping up as he is doing more to be more active and doing interesting things with his housemates. I'm not into like the Bible of it all, but I really found his conversation with Richard in the snug quite interesting and that he is open to just sitting down and having conversations and learning about things that are important in other people's lives, even because it seems like these chats with Richard are opening his eyes, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And the other thing that I really enjoyed about Tate, because Farida makes a very good point, they are a very political house, but Tate, I think, is quite right to say if he is not educated enough, he doesn't have to speak on something. Just because they think he should doesn't mean he has to. And with a house that is so politically charged at times this year, it was quite refreshing, because I don't necessarily think it's him sitting on the fence as the house seemed to think he is. It's just a common sense, I personally would argue, to if you're not educated enough on an issue that's being brought up, and it's not like he can run to Google or run to the internet and kind of look at different sources at the moment and make an opinion for himself, nor should he have been made to do a political boot camp before coming into the house to be aware to have those discussions. So I think it's quite reasonable, measured, and quite sensible from Tate to be like, look, there are just some things I don't want to speak on because I'm not educated, and that's fair enough. You're on a national platform, for goodness sake. I'm actually really glad that the house seems to have turned a corner, and it is much less big, bad, outside world discussions, and they've become a little more, I don't want to say insulated, but like it's become about house drama rather than big bad world drama. And I personally prefer that type of Big Brother. So the last sort of week is much more my speed when it comes to this show. It is squabbling over a situationship at best. It is squabbling over the amount of camera time you may or may not have. It is, squabbling over a comment that is made that you disagree with. That is the kind of stuff we want to see, in my personal opinion. After the break, we're going to get into all things house nominations. As Farida and Emily are immune, Caroline has another week of immunity, and Sam's just thrown back to the wolves. I'll see you after the break. Welcome back. It's time to talk nominations. And you know what? Having 4 people up is nice for once, I would argue. It's about time we got more than just a head-to-head or, well, a head-to-head or a fake fiction. Like, having 4 up, I think, is actually going to make it interesting. Apparently, the house is already speculating that it's a double, but I think that's just because they're not used to having a lot of people up all at once. Let's talk about who's up for eviction before we dive into some of my general nomination thoughts. So, facing eviction is Tate, Fiashola, Nancy, and Tasia. Now, I find some of these interesting and some of these feel like a bit of a cop-out. I feel like Tasia's nominations are probably the cop-out, because I feel like this is predominantly from what Farida has said to her and kind of the confrontation of which they had, and it's kind of made the house go, But I also don't disagree with the fact that Tasia seems very tight with Fiashola and Zila, and maybe there is some hive minding going on there. But do I think it's enough to get her nominated? I don't know about that one. Nancy, well, look, I think Nancy was bound to happen after her being nominated with Sam last week. I feel like this might be one of those nominations that we see constantly until she's gone, because I don't know whether the house really trust her. Yes, she and Jenny have made up now, even though Jenny nominated her, so they've made up, but like Jenny's still nominating us, so awkward. Also, their fight was kind of bizarre, but we might get to that later. But I feel like Nancy is one of those we're going to see probably until she leaves. Fieshola, look, it makes sense to me because I feel like as the house kind of reshuffled, everybody is obviously hearing from Emily and Farida, maybe not so much from Sam, that Fieshola, Zila and Tate are controlling the shopping list. And from what we've seen of previous series, food is life in there, and it can either go, you're loved because you're cooking, or on the other hand, it can be seen as though you're using the cooking or doing the shopping list as a get out of jail free card to just sort of skate under the radar in this house. So I'm not entirely surprised to see Fieshola up there. However, I am surprised about Tate, because I feel like we are seeing more of him now, and I think we are seeing a genuinely nice human. And again, as I said before the break in my little tangent, he, for whatever reason, is choosing to not get involved in some of these deeper, more real-world conversations. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Everybody is entitled to make their choice. I do think it's interesting, though, however, that our dear farmer, Cameron Kay, did not receive a single nomination. I just think that's because the bits we're seeing of him, he just comes across as genuinely quite, not shy and retiring, but just calm, quiet, but also quite easy to live with is what we're seeing. Like, I don't think we've really seen a housemate complain about Cameron, so I do think that's quite interesting that he has received no nominations. And will that change as time goes on? Because will people go, hold on a minute, this is a game and you're just sailing through? Quite probably, folks, quite probably with this house. But while we're talking about nominations, let's move on to the rule break. Now look, I've said this before and I'm just going to repeat myself briefly. Build a jail, Big Brother. Just do it. It's going to make your life so much easier rather than plonking that stupid jail down in the garden. Just put one built in to the walls. If the housemates are going to keep breaking the rules so much, do it. Put it right in front of their faces and just do it. It would make everything so much easier and you could actually have some fun with it. A la the doll's heads in Big Brother 9, just saying. I would. But I kind of feel a bit bad for Elsa here. Yes, it was a break of the rules, but this one I was kind of entertained by because you could kind of see her go, oh, I've broken the rules. But I also really loved Caroline's desperate attempt to just get her to stop. Because Caroline knew that this wasn't going to end well, but she tried as she might to get her to stop talking. And I really enjoyed that. Do you know what? There has been such a shift in this house in the last couple of days, and it's making me excited for the rest of this series because I feel like we're getting a different side to all of these housemates. They've kind of been rumbled and reminded where they are. And I'm hoping that we'll continue to see this inter-house drama situation because Elsa's anger over being jailed over her non-nomination of Richard, I really enjoy it. And you know what? I think it's been my high point of Elsa for the week thus far. I genuinely did feel for her with how triggered she was with Jenny and Nancy's fake fight. Was I that entertained by the fake argument? No. It just made me question some of the reactions by some of the housemates. Although, props to Caroline for calling it straight away. She saw straight through the nonsense. But I really did feel for Elsa, because clearly Elsa has been through a lot, which I don't know if it's great that she's in this house. I feel like this house is probably more triggering than it is helpful for her. And that kind of makes me a little worried for her. Not saying she can't handle herself, but we're just seeing a lot of things kind of hitting a lot of trigger points for Elsa. And I'm worried. I'm really quite worried for Elsa. But there you go. There is the nominations episode. Actually, hold on. There's one more thing I have to talk about before we go. Richard, you absolute diary room icon. His rant about Caroline, I loved. He has Caroline sussed out to a T. And I also really enjoy his distaste for the injustice of her being immune, given his opinion of her. I saw Rosie from Big Brother 2024, also known as Baked Potato, sorry Rosie, say online that what if the plot twist is that Caroline is into Richard and she just doesn't know how to deal with it? And now I cannot unsee it. Rosie, I think you're correct. There is just such a weird... Unless she's like, there can only be one older person in this house and he's trampling on my style. There's got to be... Like, it's a bit strange that he keeps catching strays from Caroline. So I'm kind of glad he's throwing it back at her. But I've got to say, I'm really enjoying watching this house more over the last few days. So I'm excited to see where the rest of the week takes us, because apparently we're getting another non-normal eviction. So I don't know how that one's going to go. But you know what? We'll find out together, because I will see you again on Friday for another episode of He's Always Watching, in which we will unpack the eviction. And we're going to unpack some of the other tasks for this week, because I know I said I owed you a task moment, so we're going to come back. But my brain was just very much on nominations and the rule break, so we'll come back to this, alright? If you have enjoyed this episode, please rate and review it on whatever podcasting app you are listening to us on. 5 stars only, please, because it does help the algorithms. And I would love to know your thoughts and feelings on this week's action so far, so you can come over and vote on the polls on Twitter, on Threads, on Instagram, because we're doing Instagram polls as well. So you can give me your thoughts on this week's action, and I will sort of collate some of your opinions for an opinion segment on Friday's show. So stay tuned for that one. Thank you for being here. I love you very much. I will see you on Friday for another episode. But in the meantime, remember, Big Brother's not the only one who's always watching. Take care.